Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel. We continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 26b, Our Father Abraham. This one is called My Sister, My Beloved. And before we get into it, this class, this teaching, all the Torah that might come from this is for the elevation of the soul, Leilui Nishmat, my uncle, Rafael Tzvi ben Yaakov Nehemiah. He just passed yesterday, or this morning rather. Mizmor David, Adonai roi lo echsar benot asher bitzeni al mem menuchot ינעלני נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות לא ירא כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי דישנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Yeah, okay. Let's get into it. הללו את אדוני כל גויים, שבחו כל האומים, כי גבר עלינו חסדו, ואמת אדוני לעולם. Hallelujah. So we continue with the journey of our father Abraham, in whose merit the world was created and in whose merit the world would stand. We start with the fourth trial. Well, we continue with the fourth trial. The fourth trial, from the day when the heavens and the earth were created, the Holy One, blessed be He, had not brought into the world a famine, but only in the days of Abraham. So that first famine, that is the first famine the world has ever seen. And not in any of the lands, but only in the land of Canaan, in order to try him and to bring him down into Egypt, as it is said, and there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt. Genesis 12:10. So, we have a question right now. If the first trial that Abraham would have to face was the binding of Isaac, would he have passed? God speaks to Abraham. Abraham waits for a son his whole life. At age 137, he's like, give me your son. If that was Abraham's first trial, would he have passed? The answer is actually it's irrelevant because God does not work that way. Notice the pattern here, specifically in this one also, and how God works, not only with Abraham, but with us all. I promised you a son, I delivered, now give him back to me, right? That's the Akedah in a nutshell. What do we see here on a much smaller scale? I told you to leave everything you know and go to a land where I will show you. And this land will be to you and your descendants as an inheritance. But also, now, there's no food here. So if you stay, you're going to die. So skedaddle. Although God didn't tell him that. God didn't say go down to the land of Egypt, right? But you see how that works, right? God gives us something. He shows us something. He gives us a promise. And then he removes it. But I thought you said that. Yes, he did. Is God a liar? No, he's not, right? So the fact that he removes us from that doesn't mean that his final promise is going away. It just means that this is how you get to that final promise. This is the ups and the downs in our life. When we see something good coming, something incredible, especially when it is something wholesome and godly, moving in the right direction, and all of a sudden that gets taken away. This is how God works with all of us. And right now we got the prime example with Abraham. Okay, so few of us are aware of the blessings that we receive from God, but only because they are abundantly obvious. In most cases, you will never know what God has done for you throughout your life, right? It's not only that God gives you life every second, he protects you every second, right? If you learn the basics of human anatomy, and I don't know anything about, I know a little bit, like little bit, right? But I know how my body falls apart if I have a cold, right? You see how frail we are, especially after a fast. At the end of Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av, especially because Tisha B'Av is a much longer fast. So at the end of that, you realize how much your body is dependent on food and water. And then 2 minutes after you eat, all of a sudden your strength is back, you're rejuvenated. We are so frail. There are so many things that can go wrong, right? Everything has to go right. Everything has to be perfect. So the fact that we are here and that we are breathing and that we have an opportunity to draw nearer to God, this is a blessing within itself. You'll see that movie, what's it, the Curious Case of Benjamin Button, right? How it starts out and she's a ballet dancer, but then across town, a guy came with the car and he was late and he caused a chain reaction. And because of that, she broke her leg and lost her career or something like that. We don't know what driver has to leave or come or could hit us or could not hit us. Every moment of every day, God keeps us alive. Not only does he grant us life, but he keeps us alive. He protects us. So there's no way that we could possibly be aware of this unless, oh my goodness, I just almost, I could have died in that car accident, but it didn't happen. So many times in our lives. Those are the big ones. But we don't know. We don't see what goes on all the time. But the fact that we are here shows that God is with us. And therefore, we have to take advantage, appropriately speaking, of the time that we have. So, in most cases, like I said, you're not going to know, you're not going to see this throughout your life until when? Until the afterlife, in which case you will not be able to thank and worship God enough, because that's what it says. The angels, that's all they do. They worship God because they realize they don't have our human characteristics. They don't feel pity or shame or sorrow or happiness or sadness. These are human emotions, right? These emotions, they are not real. They don't make us who we are. These emotions are not true. They are a layer on top of us, right? But the angels, they are with the truth, pure and simple. And what does the truth do? Worships God. That's it. Because, wow, you gave us life, and here we are, and we're alive. Thank you, thank you. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Kadosh, 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 right? This is what they say. And these are amongst the God-fearing people. In other words, who actually have a little bit of an inkling of what's going on and then afterwards. But what about those who don't really know God and are on the fence at best about, is there a God? Is there not a God? Only if they get what they want, most of the world, if they get what they want, they may attribute that to God. Oh, thank God, okay? Regardless if it's really good for them in the first place. In other words, it has to be really good. If it's not good for them, there is no God. But if something good happens, then they do believe in God, right? I've seen there was we just had elections again, and oddly enough, the one of the parties in Israel was called Meretz. For the first time, I think, since the establishment of the party, they did not even they didn't even receive enough votes to get into the fake Knesset over here. But the thing about this party is that they were anti anything that had to do with Torah. Those were the ones I gave a class that last year they left the camera running in the cabinet office. And you see the party members, only them, they kept the camera on, and how they speak about the Orthodox Jews. Like dogs. Unbelievable. These people no longer exist. This is the first time since the history of their establishment. And oddly enough, I remember, I think it was in 95 or 97 that this was the first time that Bibi ran for prime minister, I think. In any case, that night, I was in the army at the time. Was I in the army at the time? I think I was in the army at the time. Maybe earlier. Anyway, I can't exactly remember. Somewhere in the mid to late 90s. Bottom line, the founding member of that party, his name was Yossi Sarid. They got, on the night of the election, they started counting the votes, and they started getting a high percentage of votes, whereas the Orthodox parties got very low percentages of the votes, and they're cheering and they're partying and this and that, and it looked like Shimon Peres was going to win. Yeah, it was Peres against Bibi. So it had to, I think it was 99 or 2000. So in any case, This guy, Yossi Sarid, who doesn't even believe in God, who constantly, again, the things that the way they speak to their Jewish brethren was despicable. He said on camera, he goes, oh, look at all the mandates that we're getting, the mandatim, the votes that we're getting. This just proves that there is a God, he said. In jest, obviously making fun of. The next morning, when everyone woke up, they didn't receive not one single more, again, it's called mandates. In other words, how many people could sit in their party, therefore they have more power in the parliament. They didn't receive one more vote, but all the other religious parties started getting all the votes, and in the end, also Bibi won. Again, I don't want to get into politics and what was then and what is now. The point is, he made fun of this aspect, and because of that, nothing. Don't do that. So these are people that when it's convenient for them, they call out to God, but when it's not, obviously, it's best to keep it quiet. So again, remember, what we want and what we need are rarely the same thing. And I really do mean rarely the same thing. Because if they were, then there would be no trials and no faith to build on, right? No trials, no faith to build on. That's how we build up who we are. So what we want and what we need are two different things, because our vision is limited. God sees everything. God knows everything. There is no time and space for God. He knows what is best for us. So that's why we have to let go of our own inhibitions, attach ourselves to God, and then by default, we want what he wants, whatever that may be. That's why we believe that everything that comes our way, be it seemingly good or seemingly bad, it all comes from the same source. And that source, by default, is all good, right? Write this verse down and meditate on it. Because if you make peace with this and you understand it, it can alleviate all your problems. Now, not saying you won't struggle, not at all, because that is the trial. It is a struggle, of course. But if you have this understanding with you, you will pass any trial that you are going through. And as we've learned, you must go through the darkness in order to receive the light. Must. Isaiah 45:7. Yotzer or, boreh choshech, oseh shalom, uboreh ra. Ani Adonai oseh kol ele. Who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil. I am the Lord who makes all these. If you remember that, so you'll know that the trials and the struggles that you're going through right now, and it is, of course, causing you pain. This all comes from God, so don't be mad at God, because it's not about the pain. You focus on the pain, right? We all focus on the pain. Don't focus on the pain. It's not about the pain. It's about getting through it and how you're going to handle yourself while it's happening, regardless of what your challenge is. The world of formation. Now, again, we use the words here, form and create, right? The world of formation is on a lower level than the world of creation. Emanation, creation, formation, doing, asiyah, our world, okay? God forms light, but creates darkness. You see this, showing us that the darkness always comes first, as God said, creates darkness. What happened? Read Genesis 1. First there was darkness and the abyss, and then the light came through the darkness. Always, this is how our life works. If you're going through a tough period right now, you hang tough. I know, easier said than done. No, I'm not taking away from anybody, okay? Nobody. Nothing. It's hard. It's hard. So like we said, the world of formation is on a lower level than the world of creation. And through the darkness, God forms the light. Through the darkness. So the darkness is necessary. You think evil comes from Satan or evil people, and only peace and love comes from God. Come on. Evil is on the created level of darkness, and peace, oseh shalom, makes peace. Do you hear this again, the verse? Who makes peace, oseh shalom, and creates evil. Oseh is the world of asiyah, that is the lowest form, peace. And yet, evil comes from the world of creation, much higher level. All these things are necessary. The world of asiyah, doing, action, our world, is the lowest of all. And yet, this is where peace is called to be established. Are we all familiar with how we close out the Shmoneh Esrei, or the benching, the prayer for the bread after you eat a meal? We conclude with Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom oseh, make. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru Amen. He who makes peace in his high places shall make peace upon us and all Israel, as we say Amen. God handles it there. We're supposed to handle it here. We can read the first half of the verse in Job 25:2 that says, dominion and fear are with him. He makes peace in his heights. Hamoshel b'fachad imo, oseh shalom bimromav. So that's where the first half comes from. Dominion and fear. Hamoshel, the governor. Dominion, right? That is the Archangel Michael on the right, representing water. Vafachad, fear. This is the Archangel Gabriel on the left, representing fire. Water, fire. So we have opposite elements that always sit before God. Water and fire, both standing before God, and neither comes into the other's domain, nor cancels the other out. But there's perfect peace and harmony between them. This is why I said, Oseh Shalom b'momav. There's peace. Everything has its borders and boundaries, exactly how God made the world. What is the world trying to do today? To remove borders and boundaries and anything that makes any kind of sense. Everything is all mixed. So there's no borders, there's no genders, there's no religions, there's no nothing, there's just something different, but it's all one big mishmash. Quite the opposite of everything that you can read in the Torah, especially in Genesis, of how God made all things. So, again, there's perfect harmony between them always. So too we ask our Creator to make la'asot peace upon us. How could God make peace upon us? By giving us his laws and statutes and commandments. Do this, don't do that. We're supposed to be like a mirror, like a reflection, if you will, of the truth. And this is how we're called to live down here. Everything has its purpose, and yet nothing overrides anything else. Amazing. Look at that. Laws, statutes, and commandments. Because when we live as told, as God told us to live, in order, his order, not ours, then there will be peace here as well. Very, very simple. As no man will encroach upon his fellow, and there will be plenty for all to live in peace. This will only be complete, obviously, after the temple is built, and the time, as we know it, begins to fade when we complete our 6,000 years over here, and then we go into the 7,000th, and then the concept of time, and later on space, begins to be removed from existence. Nothing is ever done like that, if you'll notice. So why am I saying all this? Because Abraham was raised in this order, the order of God and not the order of man. And he lived by this order. And as a result, his life, his achievements, his abundance, and eternal blessing speak for itself. Right? Abraham. Right. How did he live? Exactly like this. He was a true chassid of the Holy One, blessed be he. He lived in the polar opposite of the entire world, the way they lived at the time, which is why God called Abraham one. The way the world lived back then is the way it lives today, as said in Jeremiah 17:5 and 6. So says the Lord, damned is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his arm. We know who that's talking about, right? And whose heart turns away from the Lord, and all who follow. He shall be like a lone tree in a plain and will not see when good comes, and will dwell on parched land in the desert, on salt-sodden soil that is not habitable. In other words, nothing comes from that. If you think that your idea of good is what is really good, careful which category you align yourself with, right? Everything, we are called to sift through everything. We are in the world of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, aka the tree of death, right? We all die. There is death in the world, just like God told Adam. The tree of knowledge of good and evil means that within everything, there is always a possibility of good and evil, and it is never as simple as you may think. I could be doing something good with the wrong intent, with the wrong thoughts, and therefore I corrupt that which is good, not to mention the obvious, right, of taking it to completely the other side. You see, there has to be a sifting process within everything that we do, even within our thought process. But be like Abraham, our father, who lived every waking moment of his life, as said in Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8, the following two verses. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord shall be his trust. The Lord shall be his trust. Baruch hagever asher yiftach b'Adonai ve'haya Adonai mivtacho. God is his trust. For he shall be like, remember the tree, where the tree was in the desert, nothing's coming of that, tree's going to die, fade away from all memory. But this man who trusts in the Lord, for he shall be like a tree planted by the water and by a rivulet, spreads its roots, and will not see when heat comes, and its leaves shall be green. And in the year of drought, and hey, we're experiencing drought, aren't we? Drought of Torah, of any kind of light. Where is God right now? He's hidden doubly, triply, quadruply. In the year of drought will not be anxious. Lo yid'ag, lid'og is to worry. There will be no worry because we know where it comes from. I got to tell you myself, even all the shenanigans that went on in the world over the last 2-3 years, I'm worried. We're thinking the worst. What could happen? Obviously not all the time. I'm teaching here, don't worry, don't worry. Like I said, everything I teach here, I put myself on that side. I take it for myself as well. Everything I say to you, I say to myself. Neither shall it cease from bearing fruit. In other words, good will come. Just make sure you're standing in the right place. How so? Baruch hagever asher yiftach b'Adonai ve'haya Adonai niftacho. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord shall be his trust. We're going to see these examples coming up time and again when Abraham will be tested over and over again and go through trials I guarantee all of us would fail. Every last one of us. We're not on these levels. He did it so we don't have to again. And these are not even considered among the 10 big ones that defined him as the living manifestation of chesed, kindness in this world. In other words, it wasn't only the big 10 trials that he went through. So, why was this, what he went through now, a trial? Because God never told Abraham to descend to Egypt, but caused the first famine in the history of the world, in the good land that God promised to Abraham and his descendants. Again, you see this pattern. This is what God did right now with Abraham. Same thing, he did this with Isaac, although with Isaac, after the Akedah, Isaac could not leave the land of Israel. But then again, we see he did the same thing with Jacob. Obviously, in upcoming classes, we will be learning this as well. As the Radal says, Lenisayon, for the trial, Lo haya efshar sheyeh al yedei nitilat reshut. It would not be possible for it to be a trial if there was permission to begin with. In other words, it's not that Abraham didn't ask God. Yes? Abraham prayed to God, I guarantee you, every day, okay? Obviously, tiken shacharit. Nevertheless, can I go down to Egypt? Can I not go down to Egypt? You got to think of this like this, right? You promised me, you told me to be here. You already told me twice. Go to the land. I went, I came back, went back to my father's house. Again, lech lecha, be in this land. I need you to be in this land right now. But guess what? There's no food. What am I going to do? I'm going to wait on the Lord. And what? And you and your entire household are going to die of starvation? God did this. Abraham knew that this is from God. And we know the Torah is life, not death. Okay, that's the other religion that we die for God. No one's asking you to die. God is saying, I need you to live. Need you to live. What kind of testimony is that if you die? Live and live well. So life comes first. You see what he did? He's like, I'm going to go where the food's at. So at this point, and at that time in the world, it was said that Egypt was likened to the Garden of Eden of this world. Egypt, this is Gan Eden Alei Adamot. Gan Eden. The Garden of Eden was Egypt in this world. It was just beyond imagination. Super advanced civilization, abundance of all things, architecture, and so on. So why did God make it so Abraham would descend specifically to Egypt? This we'll see in Abraham's next trial, okay? The fifth trial was this is the next trial. Okay, so this was the fourth trial. Now we're going right into the fifth trial. The fifth trial was when Sarah, his wife, was taken to Pharaoh to be his wife. And is there any man who, seeing his wife taken away to another man, would not rend his garments? But he trusted in the Holy One, blessed be he, that he would not approach her, meaning that Pharaoh would not touch his wife. He understood that this was all part of the whole thing. In other words, these two things are related. God needed him to go down to Egypt. God set this up. And as we know, that's exactly what happened from the book of Jasher. And in that year, there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. In other words, they're staying in Israel, certain death. And Abram and all his belongings rose and went down to Egypt on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook of Mitzrayim, okay, one of the outer rivers over there, or it could be the Nile, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook of Mitzrayim, and Abram looked at the water. It's interesting, the line. It says he looked at the water, and behold, and he saw Sarah, his wife, and behold, he saw that she was very beautiful. What I think happened over here, again, I'm saying what I think happened, it can't be that he never looked at his wife. He did, but never directly. Again, when they were together, there are laws of intimacy between husband and wife. You have to be in a room with, no holy books or scripture out there. There cannot be any light that causes light. In other words, you can't be romantic with candles. It's not about that, right? It's about how to do it the correct way. Lights out. If you want to open the curtains, from the light outside, that's fine. But again, it has to be in the dark. So Abram never really saw Sarah's form. Same thing with Jacob. How did Jacob not know that it was Leah and not Rachel? Perfect, complete darkness. Obviously, she told him the things to say and everything. So what I think here happened is that he saw her reflection in the water because they were walking by the water. He looked at the water and saw her reflection in the water, and it said that in the book of Jasher in Hebrew, it says that she looked like the rising sun. Again, her reflection from the water, because that's the only time he's technically stared directly at her. And he goes, whoa. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, since God has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I'm afraid of the Egyptians, lest they should slay me and take thee away, for the fear of God is not in these places. Now, if you're going to read Rashi and other Mefarshim, one of the things it says that Abram looked at Sarah and he saw 4 angels surrounding her, but he didn't see any angels surrounding him. Therefore, he knew that no matter, he trusted in God, nobody is laying a hand on her. And he also knew that the Egyptians absolutely would have killed him, and we'll see this. So he's afraid of the Egyptians. Fear of God is not in these places. They don't fear God. Therefore, the immoral people, they'll do whatever. Surely, then thou shalt do this. Say, you are my sister. And by the way, that's not a lie. Just like we see Lot and Sarah were siblings, right? They were both the children of Abram's brother. Now, what happens if you are the son of your brother, right? Then also it is from the line of your brother. Therefore, you are also called his brother. So Lot was technically also Abram's brother. Sarai was technically Abram's sister in that aspect. You see? Okay. It was his niece, nephew. Okay. Surely then say you're my sister, that they, to all that may ask you, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those who came with him from Egypt on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, if the Egyptians ask you concerning Sarai, say that she is the sister of Abram. No problem. And yet, and by the way, and Lot can actually say this, or even you could say she's my sister, because Lot and Abram also looked a lot alike. Again, back then the family genes, I guess, were stronger. So he looked just like his father, Abram's brother, who looked just like Abram. And we even say that we see that Isaac was a carbon copy of Abram. So, yes, we understand this now. And yet, with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it among their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Egyptians. So it wasn't only for his sake. He doesn't, you think he just wants to allow his wife to be taken? He's like, listen, if it comes down to it, say I'm your brother, but oy vavoy, no one can see you, woman. Got my sunglasses on over there. Also in that same place where it said where Abraham saw Sarah, our sages say they understood according to this that the rest of the women of the world were like monkeys compared to Sarah. Sarah was the most beautiful woman to have ever lived, second only to who? To Eve. That's it. That's it. Whole nother level over there. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook of Mitzrayim and came to Egypt, and they all scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came into Egypt, and when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Egyptians saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, what's in that chest, man, that we have not seen? Now open it up and give a tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, this chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. Anything else you want, just take. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, obviously, it's like, oh, now you think? Saying, it is a chest of precious stones, give us a tenth thereof. Abram said, all that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest. Whatever you do, don't open it. He knew it was going to come. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached out to the chest, and they opened it with force, and they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. They're looking at it, they're like, come, look at this. What is this? And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king, and Pharaoh ordered her to be brought. And the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly. And he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. Here's your finder's fee. Thanks. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife, and he prayed to the Lord to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at the time. You're going to see who God answers. And Sarai also prayed at that time and said, O Lord, God, thou didst tell my lord Abram to go from his land, from his father's house, to the land of Canaan. What we discussed, You told him to go there, and he did, and thou didst promise to do well with him, if he would perform thy commands. Right? Right. Now behold, we have done that which you have commanded, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we did not know before. We did everything you said, God. We did everything you said. Every single step after painstaking step. And we came to this land to avoid the famine. Now we couldn't stay there. We had to come here. And look where am I? They put me in a trunk and now I'm in this king's chamber. What's going on? And this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord God, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of your mercy. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. Talk about a guardian angel over there. It's like not a little pinky was laid on her. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of the Lord was standing over them. Okay, and he appeared to Sarai and said to her, do not fear, for the Lord has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, what is that man that who brought you over here? And she said, he's my brother. And the king said, it is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, and maid servants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. And the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. Do you recall the question we brought up earlier as to why specifically did Abraham and Sarah have to descend to Egypt? Well, we read the next text from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, you'll already begin to have an understanding of this, a much better understanding of this. Rabbi Joshua, son of Karcha, Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Omer, said, in that night when our mother Sarah was taken, it was Passover night. Egypt, Passover, right? It was Passover night, and the Holy One, blessed be He, brought upon Pharaoh and upon his house great plagues, to make known that thus in the future would he smite the people of this land, as it is said, and the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues, Genesis 12:17. Now in Hebrew, as taken from 12:17, which reads, Vainga Adonai et Paro Negaim Gdolim, great plagues. The great plagues is called Negaim Gdolim, like we said, which is a hint at the 10 plagues God would smite Egypt in the future, as there are 10 letters. Negaim Gdolim, 5 and 5. So that's a hint. Negaim Gdolim, you're going to get these Negaim Gdolim later on down the line. We're going to continue from Jasher. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her. When the angel smote him heavily. I would just love to see what happened there. You understand? It's like, hey girl, boom, flying across the room. Okay. Smote him heavily. And he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. What happened just now? And when the king, maybe it was like an electric shock, I don't know. And when the king came near Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground. He said, I'm not touching, nothing. Just walk near her. And acted thus to him the whole night, and the king was terrified. So don't even look in her direction. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, surely on account of this woman, light bulb, has this thing happened to me? And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. Hey you. Let's just take it easy. I just want to cuddle. Just talk. I want to talk. That's it. No problem. And the king said to Sarai, tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with thou whom has comest here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband. She's like, okay, nothing. You got my back. This man is my husband. And I said to thee that he was my brother. She's telling Pharaoh, lest thou shouldst put him to death through wickedness. She said, I said that he was my brother because otherwise you would kill him. And the king kept away from Sarai. Did Pharaoh even deny these claims? You see, everything had reason and merit. If he would have said, she is my wife, well, okay, Sarah's now a widow, and oh, what a tragedy, and there we go. He didn't deny these claims. He goes, yes, straight up, we would have killed the dude. So of course not. Now, this is for two reasons. One, why did he not deny these claims? One, there's an angel beating him down. So lying right now was not an option. And two, because they absolutely would have killed Abraham for Sarah, no question. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of the Lord ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. None of this is a coincidence. I'm going to tell you something else, though. Okay, I'll tell it now because I'll probably forget even just in a few minutes' time because I'm reading the rest of the stuff. And I mentioned this in other partial teachings that I did about this. Pharaoh, after they left because of Sarai's beauty, and again, they're all sorcerers and everything, Pharaoh, and this is in Rabbeinu Bachye, I believe, Pharaoh made a sex doll of Sarah. It was white. It said it was white marble in her image. And at night he would say, she was in his bedchamber. And at night he would say incantations. And that marble statue would become alive and be like Sarah. Every single pharaoh from this one to the one where Moses and his people were in Egypt, every single pharaoh went through this image of Sarah, disrespecting our mother Sarah, which is why also Pharaoh in the end got it hard, super hard. Okay? So just so you see, crazy things going on here. So that happened. Okay, anyway, none of these things that we're reading here, none of this is a coincidence. We're going to continue from PDE. Rabbi Joshua ben Karcha said, because of his love for her, Pharaoh, for Sarah, again, he was completely head over heels smitten, right? Pharaoh wrote in her marriage document, he gave her a ketubah. He goes, here. He gave her all his wealth, whether in silver or in gold or in manservants or land, and he wrote, giving her the land of Goshen as a possession. We know the land of Goshen, yes? Who was the rightful owner? Who owned the land of Goshen? This was Sarah Imenu, where the 12 tribes sat, right? They went and they sat in the land of Goshen. Whose property were they on? Sarah's property. Straight up, it said that Pharaoh gave her lands all over the kingdom and all over the world, only in her lifetime. But the land of Goshen was for eternity he gave to her. So technically, when Israel was in Goshen, we were sitting on our land, courtesy of Sarai Menu. Okay, so basically it's Sarah's land, by extension then Abraham's land, and then by extension our land, till this day, east of the Nile. The real spiritual borders of Israel stretch from the Nile, west of Goshen, right? There's Goshen and then the Nile to the west, to the Euphrates, cutting right through Iraq, formerly known as Babylon. So the rivers kind of it's backwards. Okay, I'll do it. So this is, forget it. Look at a map. Okay, and so our text says, therefore the children of Israel dwelt in the land of Goshen, in the land of their mother Sarah. Wow. In Hebrew, to hold is to, or grasp is called achiza, right? An estate is called achuzah. Exodus 47:27. Vayeshev Yisrael, that's Genesis 47:27. Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim, be'eretz Goshen, vaye'achazu ba, vayefru vayerbu me'od. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen. This is like we said, when Jacob and his sons and the 70 soul descended to Egypt, and they acquired property in it, vaye'achazu ba. You can't translate this properly. And they were prolific and multiplied greatly. Achuzah, vaya'achazu ba. Okay? In other words, to hold or to grasp. Israel was to hold the land of Goshen, to grasp onto it, because it was Sarah who gained a foothold by the descent to Egypt. That's why they went there. That's why Abraham and Sarah went there. That's why God sent Abram all over the land of Israel, wherever, Simba, wherever your eye can see, that's your land, or something like that. It's been a while. But Abram, wherever you go, this is yours. Why did God make Abram go to all these places, and especially down to Egypt? Because Abraham had power. He broke the klipot wherever he stood, wherever he stepped. Boom, 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 boom. Think of if the whole land was like a frozen lake, and every step of Abram was shattering the lake over there for the truth. Emet me'eretz titzmach. This started with Abraham and Sarah, which is why the entire land of Israel, which is why even coming from Babylon all the way to Haran and Israel and Egypt, the klipot already have been, there's a chink in the armor over there. And then it continued through the ages. He also wrote, giving her Hagar to Pharaoh, to Sarah, his daughter from a concubine, as her handmaid. And whence do we know that Hagar was the daughter of Pharaoh? Because it is said, now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar, Genesis 16:1. So understand that Pharaoh giving his daughter to Sarah was probably the greatest kindness that Pharaoh could have done for Hagar from Jasher. And the king took a maiden whom he begot by his concubines. In other words, she wasn't necessarily the princess, but she was still the daughter of the king. And he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, "It is better for you, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell on us on account of this woman." In other words, right? It's better to, the saying nowadays, right? I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven. Shows you the generation that we live in. It is better to serve Abraham and Sarah than to reign in Pharaoh's house. Who's got it twisted now? Pharaoh recognized the power that Sarah possessed, namely because her personal bodyguard was an angel of God. So why did he give away his daughter? Why did royals back in the day marry only other royals? Right? Because that's how you get a foothold in the kingdom which you marry into. We are not dividers, we are unificators. Remember that? Yeah, that was for real. The reason it's said that Solomon ruled the world, again, he was one of the rulers of all the world, is because he exclusively married queens and princesses from other nations, thereby bringing them under his submission. You see, he thought about this. He wanted to do this on purpose, but, a bit much. I'm not judging based on, the Torah. That's it. Who are we to judge Solomon? Seriously. So don't forget, in the end of the day, when Father Abraham returns, you better believe he will put Ishmael in check. Who's your daddy? Abraham. Okay. Pharaoh rose up early in the morning, confused because he had not approached her, and he sent and called Abraham and said unto him, "Behold, Sarai thy wife is before thee." Hey man, here's your wife. And all the deeds of her marriage contract are with her. Look what I gave her. I gave her so much stuff. It's all good. Take it. Take her and go, and do not tarry in this land. As it is said, now therefore, behold, take thy wife, take her, and go. Genesis 12:19. Right? Pharaoh is shooing away Abraham from his land with all his silver and all his gold and livestock and servants. Where have we read this before? Exodus 12:29. It came to pass at midnight, and the Lord smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who is in the dungeon, and every firstborn animal. And Pharaoh rose at night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great outcry in Egypt, for there was no house in which there was no one dead. So he called for Moses and Aaron at that night, and he said, get up from among my people, both you as well as your children, all the children of Israel, and go. Just go. Worship the Lord you have spoken. Just go. Please go. Wait. I'm not done yet. Take also your flocks and your cattle. All that you have, just take it and go. But you shall also bless me, right? We're cool now. We're cool. Peace, right? This is how Pharaoh left. Because again, Pharaoh came and he, I think he did, or was it Avimelech? I'm not sure, but I think when Sarah died, Pharaoh was one of the kings that came to lament. And no, it wasn't when Sarah died. He came Isaac's birth. That's when he came. Okay, so the Egyptians took hold of the people to hasten and to send them out of the land. All the Egyptians helped Israel. Here, you want to go, right? We're all helping you. We're friends. Please don't hurt us anymore. For they said, we are all dead. The people picked up their dough when it was not yet leavened, their leftovers bound in their garments and on their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to Moses' order, and they borrowed from the Egyptian silver objects, golden objects, and garments. Why does it say borrowed? Because really it was Israel's, acquired by Joseph. And then when Israel, again, we've read Jasher, what happened in the time where after when the 12 tribes came down to Egypt, they were living it up. They were the wealthiest people over there. And slowly but surely, once the regime started to change, they started robbing Israel of all their goods, all their gold, all their silver. So all the gold and all the gold and all the silver, all the wealth of Egypt was Bizchut Yosef and the 12 tribes. That's it. So they were taking back what was there. Vaishalu mitzrayim. It also says Vaishalu as in Lish'ol, they asked Egypt, can we have our stuff back? What stuff? But then we know what happened in the plague of darkness, right? Israel was walking around, they could see, they made notes of it. And then on their way out, they came to have knock, knock, knock. Yes, can I help you? Like, yeah, I want my gold back. What gold? We don't have any gold in this house. Go into your kitchen, second cabinet over there, and then down there, and then there. Oh, that gold. Right. I was keeping it for you. Yeah, here you go. Understand. The Lord gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they lent them, and they emptied out Egypt. The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot, men beside the young children. And also a great mixed multitude went up with them, and flocks and cattle, very much livestock. Mikneh kaved meod. Kaved, very heavy, as in they were, loaded, if you will. And we know that all the wealth of Egypt, like we said, had been acquired by Joseph, and so Israel took what was rightfully theirs. Again, theirs through God, obviously. And it all started with what? Abraham and Sarah going down and just stepping in the land. I gave you land, cattle, sheep, goats, manservants, maidservants, silver and gold, and even my own daughter. Now please, pretty please, with sugar on top, take your wife and go. And Pharaoh commanded men on his behalf, and they escorted him and his wife and all that was his. Just leave. Now everything that Pharaoh gave to Sarah, Avimelech gave to Abraham, as it is said in Genesis 20:14. And Avimelech took flocks and cattle and menservants and maidservants, and he gave to them, to Abraham, and he restored to him his wife, Sarah. Here already it's Avraham and Sarah, not Abram and Sarai. Now here's something that the English just doesn't translate. So let's read the Hebrew and go through the brilliance of the wording. מעביר לאברהם בבואו בארץ כנען עד ארץ פלישתים. As we know, Abraham is called the Hebrew, Ivri. One has okay, again, that's just because it sounds like it. Because he crossed over, la'avor. He crossed over from the whole world and stood alone. Remember what we said, 900,000 representing the whole world over there, and Abraham alone was standing in the fire, and the whole world just stood and watched. He was walking in the fire for 3 days and 3 nights. Abraham stood alone against the whole world. So to cross over in Hebrew is la'avo. Even in modern day Hebrew, la'avo et hakvish, to cross the road. So when we read the word ma'avir le'Avraham, that means to hand over or to pass the ball, ta'avir et hakadur. God handed over to Abraham everything from his ascent from the land of Egypt all through the land of the Philistines. This was Avimelech was sitting, and it's all going to Abraham. Ma'avir le'Avraham, passing over to Abraham, passing to Abraham. And all this was foreseen by the Holy One, blessed be He. What was foreseen? And Avimelech, all the women of his house were barren. Even to the lice did not produce offspring. This was before the power couple arrived in his land, the Midrash says. There are different versions of this. One of this is that everybody became barren when they were there. Here in Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, in the commentary, it says that they were barren to begin with. In other words, Avimelech's house, specifically over there, what happened? But Avimelech sent his people to take Sarah because he wanted to have sons with her. Oh, she's just, who's this gorgeous woman? Is she married? You single? You better be, or you're about to be, right? He wanted to have sons with her. He goes, yes, I want everything that comes out of me to look like her. However, Avimelech is very different than Pharaoh, as the Radal says that he was actually a righteous dude. And we can see this when God spoke to him in a dream. And it wasn't God, it was the angel, obviously, warning him not to go near Sarah. Did he not say to me, she is my sister? He's answering, right? And even she said, he is my brother. With the innocence of my heart, don't you dare lie to God, you'll know it, right? So with the innocence of my heart and with the purity of my hands, I have done this. And God said to him in a dream, I too know that you did this with the innocence of your heart, and I too have withheld you from sinning to me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Because if you would have done that, Avimelech, dude, you'd done. And now, return the man's wife because he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will surely die. Mot tamut. Bayom achlecha mimeno mot tamut. This is what God told Adam on the day that you eat from this tree. Mot tamut, not surely die. Die, you will die. You will die in this world, and you have no future in the world to come. Soul dead, death in this world and the world to come. You and all that is yours. So, give it back. Okay. And you will now see in the text that God spoke through the angel Michael in the dream. And the angel Michael descended and drew his sword against him. Avimelech said to him, is this a true judgment and a true sentence to slay me as long as I had no knowledge? I didn't know, She told me she was 18, right? You see what I'm saying? Okay. Wilt thou slay even a righteous nation? Genesis 20, verse 4. He told me she was his sister. He said unto him, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. Genesis 20, verse 7. And he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. In other words, you need his prayer. Now you understand why all this is happening. But the prayer that this holy man is going to pray for you is going to cost you. When a man comes to a city, you ask him about food and a place to stay, even about business, but regarding his wife, you do not ask him, hey man, how's your wife doing? It's like, how's your mother doing? What do you mean? The reason, say hi to your mother for me, okay? Right? Okay. The reason this is written in the text is to show that Avimelech's intentions were not 100%. And so this holds up today. You can't come to a guy and say, how's your wife doing? Like it's anyone's business. You can ask, how are things in the home? This is actually permissible to do. So the fact that Avimelech asked concerning, this man's wife, hey, is she your wife? And if she was, how dare you? You don't do that. So again, his intentions were not pure. He was hoping, but after she said, he's my brother, okay, I believed her, genuinely. That was the innocence. So how do you ask a man about his wife? You ask, Eich habayit, how are things at home? Because the woman is the home. Eich babayit, how are things? If you really want to get technical. This shows respect and honest inquiry. Why did God send Abraham and Sarah to Avimelech? For two reasons. To give Abraham incredible wealth, and two, for Abraham to pray for Avimelech and his household. Now look what Abraham does, the tzaddik that he is. Abraham arose and prayed before the Holy One, blessed be he, and said before him, Ribon kol ha'olamim, sovereign of all the worlds, you have created the man to increase on multiple. Just look at what he does. This is how we need to pray to God. You have created the man to increase and multiply. And let Avimelech and his household increase and multiply. The Holy One, blessed be he, was entreated of him, as it is said, and Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Avimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. Genesis 20:17. Now the Hebrew reads like this. Vayitpalel Avraham el ha-Elohim, vayirape Elohim. And Abraham prayed to the Elohim, el ha-Elohim. Not el Elohim, not to God, vayitpalel Avraham el Elohim, which you would probably see anywhere else. But Abraham prayed to ha-Elohim, specifically the Elohim. As we have learned, Abraham understood the ways of the world. He knew like we said, he knew all the divine language, the incantations, both on the side of light and the side of darkness. Why? Because he could handle it and he never misused it. So he understood the ways of the world, and he very well knew all the channels in which to do so, right? There are different departments, if you will, to inquire. If you need your driver's license, you go to the DMV, right? You're not going to go to a different department because this is what you need. So you go inquire of there. So, Itpalel el ha-Elohim. Avimelech and the Philistines were known idolaters who rejected the God of Abraham and paid him no mind. So why do you have a holy man such as Abraham praying for offspring for this pagan king and all his people? Meaning that there should be more idolaters in the world. Why would Abraham do this? We know what a thorn in the side of Israel, the Philistines, where it even says it, I believe even in that language. And then Samson, Shimshon, was a thorn in the side of the Philistines. The Philistines were not fun, okay? But they served a purpose. What happened in the end? David and Goliath. You see, everything serves a purpose. So, why is this holy man, back to our story, why is this holy man praying for the multiplication, if you will, of these idolaters? Abraham was known to stand firmly against such things. He didn't. No idolatry. None. I don't want to hear. No. I'm not interested in hearing about the good news. No. Okay. This is why this language was used. He didn't beseech the God he knew, okay? On his level, in the name of El Shaddai. But rather, he went back all the way to Genesis 1:27-28. And God created man in his image. Vayivara Elohim et ha'adam betzalmo betzelem Elohim bara oto zachar v'nekeva bara otam. And God blessed them. Vayivarech otam Elohim vayomer lehem Elohim Pru uvu umilu et haaretz. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. This was Abraham's prayer. Ribono shel olam, barata et ha'adam lefirya verevia. Master of the universe, you created the man, ha'adam, for the purpose of being fruitful and multiplying. This is a command for man. Master of the universe, you created the man for the purpose of being fruitful and multiplying. Again, when we read ha'adam, that is both male and female, right? Abraham could not speak to God through his own interpersonal channel because it wasn't relevant to the idolater. You don't do this. Everyone has a place where they stand. And yet still, everyone has access to God, even the idolaters. Tshuva is for all and everyone and everything. But in a sense, Abraham was also very protective of God, because if God would have kept Avimelech and his people from multiplying, that means that he would have gone against his word in the very purpose that man was created. God, you said this. Don't go against your word, God. Come on. God's like, that's my boy right there. The order of the world must go on. But the new order that has now been placed to straighten what had been skewed is the recognition and fear of the Lord, creator of all things. I'm talking about the new order of Abraham coming into the world. And this also teaches us a very valuable lesson, and that is right in the Torah. Let's read again the last 2 verses of chapter 20. 20 verses 17 and 18. And Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Avimelech. And Vayitpalel Avram el ha-Elohim, prayed to ha-Elohim, that specific channel for that specific dude and his specific offsprings. Okay. Avimelech and his wife and his handmaids, and they gave birth. Verse 18, for the Lord had shut every womb of Avimelech's household because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Again, it could have been they were waiting for them to come, for them to open. They triggered this. Now, the next 2 verses, which is already chapter 21, verses 1 and 2, reads, again, they just had he prayed to God, God healed them. Everybody gave birth because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Next 2 verses, and the Lord remembered Sarah, as he had said. Catch me on my word, Abraham? No problem. Word for word. Word. Okay. And the Lord remembered Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had spoken. Abraham reminded God to stand by his word, and so he did. And Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. You see this? And it's even in order over here. When we pray for someone, we receive what we ask for them. Now, this doesn't mean that God would not have given Abraham and Sarah a son if Abraham would not have prayed for Avimelech, right? Of course not. This was all going to happen, but this is how God chose for this to happen, which is why it was almost a kindness that our power couple over here dwelt in the land of the Philistines to begin with. But the number one reason that God brought them there, and given the choice that Abraham had by being compassionate, God said, if he doesn't pray for you, I'm not going to make him pray for you. But of course Abraham's going to pray for him, because that's who he is. That's the man of God. But God said, it's not up to me. If he asks, I'll do it. Give him back his wife. Let him pray for you. See what happens. By being compassionate and praying for Avimelech was to raise awareness. This is, what are we doing here? What are these teachings for? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And everything that I do, all of these things are related is to raise awareness. And that's it. And I wish I could raise this kind of awareness to my fellow Jews, but I don't know. I'm doing the best I can right now, right? I'm doing my ishtadlut. Above and beyond, the rest is up to God. Halevai. But we need to raise this kind of awareness, which is essentially what we are all called to do. Now, again, Abraham said, don't thank me, don't pray to me, and certainly don't praise me. Abraham would say, but come, let us all go and praise the master of the universe together. People, when we are out in the world, we represent God, the creator of the universe, both in public, in the eyes of men, and in private, in the eyes of angels and God. I mean, obviously, angels and God are everywhere also, but when you think that nobody's looking, you got to make God, don't make God look bad, okay? Especially when you think that nobody's looking, that's actually worse. We must never give an angel reason ever to go back to Psalms 8:5 and says, what is man that you should remember him? And the son of man that you should be mindful of him. This is what the angels said when God created Adam. He started knocking him off left and right over there. We've been through the stories. This is how Satan became who he was. They needed a fall guy. I'll do it. You need a bad guy, so I'm going to entice. Then Abraham came along, stood in the fire. And then finally, with all his trials and everything, until he got to the binding of Isaac, Atayadati, now I knew. What, God didn't know? He always knew, but now all the heavenly hosts know. You got to represent, remember, especially when no one is around, especially, that's when it counts, because everyone can fake it, and most people do. At this point, people already stop faking it. They're like, they don't even care anymore. But you care. I'm saying you, please, care. But rather, let it be known, as said in Genesis 22:12, for now I know that you are a God-fearing man, and you did not withhold your son, your only son, from me. And that is what the whole thing is about. Don't make God look bad. Make God a proud father. Give him nachat. Latet nachat leyotzrenu. God took Abraham into all these situations. Not only Abraham and Sarah, again, they were together as one, just like Ha-Adam is male and female, Avraham and Sarah. Abraham got this on account of Sarah. Sarah got this on account of, you understand? And why did they get these things? Because they walked straight with God, innocently with God. Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. Anyway, that's our class for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and may you all be blessed by these words. Really, I hope, take it into your lives and go with that, because it's the little things that we do that makes all the difference right now. Like we said, we see it, it's falling apart, and it's falling apart slowly, okay? It's watching paint dry. It's excruciating because you see it happening, and there's nothing that you can do to stop that. We're not supposed to stop it. These things are inevitable, but the only things that we actually have control and power over is what we do, not even our surroundings. God puts you in the situation that you're in. He puts you. You could do everything right, and all of a sudden, curveball. Uh-oh. How, where, what? But I did everything. It doesn't matter. Man plans, God laughs. But how do you conduct yourself where you are now? Because God placed you there. Remember this. God is the one that forms the light, but created the darkness. He does. He oseh shalom. He does peace. But he created evil. All this is from me, says the Lord. I did all these things. Remember that. If you can remember that, you can understand your pain. I'm going through this. This is tough, and it is all because God loves me. Remember Abraham when it comes to trials, yes? So again, may these teachings, may they enrich your life in all the best ways, and may you draw near to he who spoke and the world was. Stick around for next week. We're going to be discussing chapter 27, and we're going to go with the 6th trial of Abraham. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys so much giving me this opportunity to do these things. I really do. This is purpose in my life, beyond anything else that I've ever done. And I've done some things. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye.